Hey friends, Sean from Draft Therapy here, and today I've got my top 10 of 2019. It's the end of 2019, the end of another decade, and I'm going to run through my top 10 of the year. Now, a couple disclaimers. Only beers I've reviewed this year are going to be eligible for this whole top 10 list, so they don't have to be released this year. I just need to have reviewed them this year. For example, if I were to review Two Hearted could be on the list. Spoiler alert, Two Hearted isn't on the list. So with that being said, let's get this party started and get these draftees started. I just made that up. Number 10, Hot Marley Double IPA from Starving Artist Brewing Company in Ludington, Michigan. Very orange coming out of the can, a lot more orange than I would have expected. A nice head is building up there really well. Pour it up to the top, and let's go ahead and just dive right in here. Cheers. Sweetness up front really kind of gradually fades into this really strong citrus bitterness, and then as it fades, that starts to fade on the swallow. The sweetness comes through a little bit more orangey sweetness, and the aftertaste is kind of like this biting bitterness, but it's not overpowering. It's not too much. It's like a really refreshing kind of bitterness on the tail end too, but it's mixed with the sweetness. So the sweetness that came through at the beginning kind of wraps around and gets you on the aftertaste as well, with that bitterness, being sandwiched in between the sweetness. So it's like sweetness, bitterness, and then bitterness, and then sweetness again. So there's something in the middle there that I can't quite put my finger on. I think that's a little bit of a malty sweetness in there. Number 9, Mr. Hyde Coffee Stout from Greenbush Brewing in Sawyer, Michigan. It's coming very nice and brown, kind of a reddish brown out of the bottle here. Getting a lot more, it's almost exclusively coffee smell that I'm getting out of this. That is almost exclusively coffee taste. And so it starts off as kind of like a sweet kind of coffee flavor, almost like cream, like a creamy kind of coffee. And then it evolves and it gets a little bit more roasty, a little bit more smoky, a little bit more of a dark roasted coffee taste. That's just a really nice tasting stout. If you like dark coffee, if you like dark coffee stouts with just a tiny hint of like a sweet, creamy kind of taste in there, the sweet, creamy part comes out in the beginning of the taste, and then as you swallow and the aftertaste kind of settles in, that's when that really nice dark roasted coffee flavor comes through. And I would almost dare to say that because of that sweet kind of creamy taste in there, it mixes with that coffee taste, and it almost combines to create almost a dark chocolate kind of taste in there as well. Number 8, Black Flame Bourbon Barrel-Aged Maple Stout from White Flame Brewing Company in Hudsonville, Michigan. Coming out black as oil out of the bottle here. Getting a little bit of agitation, a lot of splashback all over my countertop here. And yeah, that smells like big time bourbon. Getting some maple in the scent as well. Actually, it's probably 50-50. There's a lot of maple in there, but there's a lot of bourbon too. These days, there's a lot of bourbon barrel-aged stouts. So it's got some big shoes to fill. Wow. That is really sweet. It's got a really sweet maple taste to it. The aftertaste that's hanging in my mouth now is maple. I thought I'd get a lot of bourbon, and I do get a taste of bourbon, but it's not in your face, super strong bourbon. It's more, the maple's kind of taking over a lot of that. I really wish I had a second bottle to age and see how it kind of matures, because sometimes the bourbon kind of dies down and the maple kind of pops up, but this I'm getting a lot of maple just from the start. It's just really smooth, really creamy, really nice. It's probably one of the best mouthfeels on a stout, on a maple bourbon barrel-aged stout that I've had probably ever. I mean, I'm kind of, there's so much maple bourbon barrel-aged stuff out there that you can kind of get tired of it, but I don't think I've had one that has had this smooth of a kind of mouth character going on throughout the entire thing, and the swallow is so easy. Number 7, Maas Agave Tequila Barrel-Aged Goza from Founders Brewing Company in Grand Rapids, Michigan. It's coming kind of a bronzish yellow out of the bottle here. I'm going to open it up there at the end. It has a kind of an orangey color, brownish orangey color to the actual beer itself. I have about 1 finger's worth of head. Wow. The tequila brings a little bit of a kind of tear to my eye, but first thing when I took it in, the first taste right off the bat, I got that saltiness, but then I'm also getting that kind of tequila in there and a lime. This, honestly, if you've had a margarita, this tastes like margarita in a beer, like a strong margarita. If I was ever a type of person that would pour beer into a glass with ice, this would be the perfect This is the perfect margarita styled beer to me. Like, I have never had a beer that has claimed to be a margarita or a margarita taste in it and tastes like a margarita. This one tastes hardcore like a margarita, and it is super dangerous because it does have that tequila kick in there, that tequila bitterness, that agave is in there hardcore, but you're not getting kind of like that hard sting of tequila. If you have a margarita that's really heavy on tequila, you sometimes get that tequila sting on the tail end. This has a tequila bite to it, but it's not a sting. It doesn't warm up your chest. Number 6, Sap on Tap, a bourbon barrel-aged maple vanilla oatmeal stout from Grand Armory Brewing in Grand Haven, Michigan. Coming out really dark, cola colored, not necessarily oil colored out of the can, and kind of get a little more aggressive on the pour there to kind of stir it up a little bit. I'm getting a lot of that vanilla, a lot of maple taste out of it. It has this on the finish though. It just has this really rich, velvety, decadent, dark chocolate, super dark chocolate, bitter dark chocolate, maple, that vanilla come through right in there, and then this, like I said, on the finish, it's just got this really dark chocolate. It's kind of like the maple acts as like the maple and the vanilla kind of act as this like kind of barrier at the beginning, because that's what you taste at first, and then that barrier is just knocked right down with the really rich, again, just decadent, fudgy, dark chocolate. Number 5. Copper Star Galactica IPA from Beard's Brewery in Petoskey, Michigan.
That is a lot darker than I was expecting to see it just out of the can. It is almost a copper, orangish, red, brown color right out of the can. So even on the taste, the aroma, I was picking up a lot of fruit punchy kind of aromas. But I'm actually getting a little bit of a fruit punchy kind of flavor in there as well. It's got a lot of kind of sweetness going on in there. It's got a hoppiness to it, but they're not overly bitter. It's very smooth. It's not bitter. Like, I'm not getting a lot of bitterness. On the bitterness that I'm getting is after the swallow, on the aftertaste. So that fruit punchiness kind of hits in the flavor department. It's fruity. It's not overly sweet, but it does have a sweetness to it. But then there's this kind of maltiness in there that kind of hangs out, which is really nice as well. It kind of adds to that sweetness. And then that's when this like really slight earthy and citrusy kind of bitter hoppiness comes through for me. And then the aftertaste, the underlying aftertaste, is that fruit punchiness, that kind of sweet, fruity flavor that I was getting at the beginning.
Number 4, Elephant Juice, a New England style IPA from Eastern Market Brewing Company in Detroit, Michigan. Coming a little yellow, somewhat hazy out of the can and collecting. Look at that. That is just a beautiful, juicy look right in the glass. Very fruity. Really very juicy, very fruity up front. The mouthfeel is nice. It's fluffy. It's kind of pillowy. It's just got this nice kind of mouthfeel that just sits on your tongue. It's not too thick. It's not too thin. It's definitely right there in the middle, medium. Drinking all these different New England style IPAs that I've had, this is what you want to get in the mouthfeel department in a New England style. Very juicy, a lot of sweet citrus flavors, maybe getting a tiny tinge of pineapple, and as you swallow, the bitterness, the hoppiness, it's in there, but it's not, it's very nice and smooth. It's a smooth taste. There is a bitter profile in there, a slight one. I think that kind of helps, kind of separate it somewhat from other New England styles, because a lot of New England styles, there's no bitterness at all. This has a little bit of bitterness to it, but it's not very bitter. It's not like it's really strong in there, but it's in there enough for you to taste it. It's got this really strong citrus bitterness. Not really strong, a nice citrus bitterness in there that kind of hangs out in the background. Number 3, Gravitational Attraction, a bourbon barrel-aged Imperial Stout from Ellison Brewery in East Lansing, Michigan. Very dark out of the can. This is like, it's not totally black and opaque, but it looks pretty close. When I'm pouring it at this much of a kind of, pour, that aggressive of a pour, you couldn't see through it. When I was a little bit slower at the beginning, that mouthfeel is so smooth, so thick, so rich. I'm just holding it in my mouth and letting it roll around. Now that I do that on the second taste, when I kind of let it, I hold a big quantity in my mouth and kind of roll it around, I do get, right before the swallow on the back of my tongue, I do get a little bit more of a kind of like bourbon barrel kind of flavor out of it. I am getting a little bit of the bourbon, but it is so smooth. This is, when I saw the can, I saw it said 14.5% alcohol by volume. I thought to myself, it's going to just be a big booze bomb, right? It's going to be really boozy, a lot of bourbon, but it's not. It's not like that at all. Number 2, Mango Unchained IPA from Baffin Brewing Company in St. Clair Shores, Michigan. It's coming very yellow out of the can here. That's got a really good mango taste to it. It's really nice and clean mango. I don't know if I've ever had an IPA that reports to have a lot of mango in it that's actually been this clean of a mango taste. It's that kind of well defined. This is a perfect beer to get somebody more into IPAs that's not really well versed with IPAs, or maybe like me, years ago they had IPAs and it was too bitter and they kind of wrote the style off. But again, it has such a nice, well-defined mango flavor. It's so easy drinking. It's such a nice, kind of crisp, light, refreshing kind of IPA. And number 1, Reclassified, a New England style IPA from Ascension Brewing Company in Novi, Michigan. It's pouring out nice and hazy, and coming out of the can, it's got a nice yellow golden color, but very hazy. There's this kind of overlying sweetness that kind of is on top of everything, and that's where I think that honey kind of comes into play. Bitter quality to it, like on the swallow, and like I said, when you hold it in your mouth, you kind of roll it around, that has that bitter quality to it, but that honey sweetness, the sweetness on top, the citrus sweetness, the juiciness kind of overlays the whole thing. It sticks there the whole time. Even though you get that bitterness, it's really evenly, nicely balanced with the sweetness, and even on the aftertaste, I have a little bit of bitterness in the aftertaste, but that sweetness just kind of hangs on top of it. It's like you think of a mattress. It's like the honey sweetness is like the pillow top on top of the inner core, the springs that the bitterness has. So I know it's a weird analogy, but that's like the first thing that came to my head when you think of it. It's kind of overlying the top the whole time. I really dig Reclassified by Ascension. It's probably becoming near the top of one of my favorite New England style double IPAs. Last but not least, I have an honorable mention, and that one goes to Rake Beer Project. Now, I didn't want to include anything that I wasn't able to review here in the studio space, but I did want to make a shout out to Rake for being a really awesome experience. I don't think I mentioned it on the video, but I mentioned it to Josh while I was there. It's really rare for a place that opens up to have any hits in its first year. It usually takes a little bit for them to get, the ball rolling, but let alone the first few weeks after opening. Rake was already giving me the vibe and flavors of a place that had been open for years and all the kinks had been worked out. I just wanted to give big props to Rake Beer Project. If you're in Muskegon or in the area and you're looking for a place to try new beer or just, a brewery to try with your friends, check out Rake Beer Project in Muskegon. They're doing just an awesome job. All right, friends, that's my draftees for 2019. Do you have any favorites from this year? Did you put together a top 10 list of your favorites, or did any of my favorites match any of your favorites? Let me know in the comments down below. Thanks for this year. Thanks for everyone watching this year. Everyone watching, everyone subscribing, everybody kind of interacting with these videos. I love doing these videos, and I really, taking those month and a half off or however long it was, really kind of made me appreciate doing this kind of stuff for you guys. So I just enjoy everybody watching, and I'm really looking forward to a great 2020. So until next time, I'm Sean from Draft Therapy. I don't have anything to point to today. But remember, drink craft beer, support your local breweries wherever they are, and most importantly, don't forget to treat yourself to a little draft therapy. Thanks for watching. Cheers, everybody.